In the 1990s, the fighting game genre was dominating the video game market with a handful of its most popular games, like Street Fighter II, Tekken, and a few others. These games revolutionized the genre with their unique gameplay mechanics, violence, or simply its amazing graphics. Look at this absolute masterpiece. Look at it. Come on, look at it. Where are you going? Look at Anyway, with these games being so popular and successful, game companies all over the globe wanted to try their hand at making the next successful fighting game. So, what do they do when they have a formula that works? Milk that formula until it's dry. All of a sudden, fighting games were coming out left and right. Like cheap cash grabs, knockoffs, or people just experimenting.
I'm a human being.
Hey guys, Daisy May here. We'll be taking a look at Darkstalkers, or Vampire as it's known in Japan. A fighting game about various fighting monsters fighting each other. This game was pretty popular back in the 90s, so much so that it spawned several spin-offs like books and TV shows. However, as the fighting game genre declined, the game itself fell into obscurity, almost being completely forgotten. Today, I want to find out why it fell into darkness, and if it could ever be brought back. But if we want to find out why, we need to go back. All the way back to the beginning, starting with its creation. After the success of Street Fighter II, Capcom wanted to create a different game. As Street Fighter itself was already beaten to the ground with its many updates, adaptations, and spin-offs, it's safe to say that the Street Fighter II trend was fizzling out a little bit. So Capcom decided to try their hand at a fresh new game and expand on mechanics and create a new visual style. They wanted to take their focus away from the usual martial arts type of setting and try something different. Capcom entertained the idea of having a fantasy monster type game. So Capcom reached out to their American branch, and a producer by the name of Alex Jimenez came up with the idea of using the classic Universal monsters in a fighting game. However, the licensing for the rights to use the characters fell through, so they decided to base the characters off the stereotypes instead. Thus came Vampire, the Night Warriors, or known as Darkstalkers in the US release. It had a more cartoony gothic style for the game. They also took note from Disney movies with their vibrant colors and slapstick type of animation. The fighting style for the characters mostly focused on their powers and abilities rather than martial arts. The cast of the characters stood out from each other extremely well and had a unique visual style to them with their moonsets and animations. I love how the designer took the most simple and well-known archetypes and pushed it to its limits. I think Darkstalkers is one of the more interesting looking fighting games out there. Darkstalkers, the Night Warriors came out in 1994 for arcades. The game featured 10 playable characters as well as 2 non-playable bosses, those characters being Morgan Iceland, a succubus who is the daughter of Belai, the ruler of the Dark World. She loved sneaking out of the castle and having fun on Earth, and by fun, I mean taking the souls of available young men. Dmitry Maximoff, a vampire lord that resides in a castle that only appears during a full moon. Years ago, he was exiled from the demon world after being defeated by Belai. He loves to feast on the blood of humans, especially young women, and make them his servants. Dmitry is the main antagonist of the first game, until later he was replaced by Pyron and just became an anti-hero. Bishamon, a cursed samurai that has demonic armor that turns him evil. Anarchist, a mummy that was resurrected by a supernatural force. Lord Raptor, a charismatic young rock star who killed himself and 100 of his fans in a ritual. He became a supernatural being when Emperor Ozam, a Soul Gourmet who noticed the Raptor's actions and revived him. He became Ozam's personal assistant, and he was told if he wants to be stronger, then he must defeat the rest of the Darkstalkers as well as collect souls for Ozam. Rico, a merman who is the lone survivor of his people. He has sworn revenge on Pyron, the person that destroyed his people and everything he knows and loves. Felicia, a Catwoman who was raised by an orphanage. She's hopeful to become a musical star one day and show the world that the Darkstalkers aren't so bad. John Talbane, a half-human, half-werewolf. When he was very young, his mother was killed by an evil supernatural, and so he ended up being raised by a half-breed werewolf like him. When his guardian was killed by a bunch of thugs, his werewolf side came out and he killed all of them. He then left his home and devoted himself to martial arts. Victor von Guggenheim. Victor was the creation of a sick scientist named Victor von Guggenheim. He lost his life shortly after giving Victor life. Without having an understanding of life and death, Victor interpreted his deceased creator's unresponsiveness for disapproval, believing that if he proves himself to be strong, that the professor would accept him. Victor departed the castle to find challengers to test his strength in hopes of getting his creator's acceptance. Sasquatch. Sasquatch is the most noble of his tribe of Bigfoot that live deep in the Rocky Mountains of Canada. When he sensed the powers of the extraterrestrial Pyron, he set out to discover the source of said power. And finally, the two unplayable bosses are Pyron, an alien from the planet known as Hellstorm that is known for their love for war, whose size largely surpasses the Milky Way. After evolving for many years, he became a powerful alien who can control fire and has an orbital span that stretches over 400,000 light years and counting. Over the span of 200 million years, he sought to collect worlds and over celestial objects throughout space by consuming them in flames. After traveling across the cosmos beyond the speed of light, he lands deep within the Atlantic Ocean to wait for the right time to consume the planet Earth. Originally, he came to Earth 65 million years ago during the age of the dinosaurs and created the army Phobos to destroy life on the planet. Phobos, an army of robots that were created by Pyron 65 million years ago with orders to destroy all life on the planet Earth. But after they succeeded in obliterating the dinosaurs, a massive earthquake traps everything deeply beneath the Earth's layers until 520 AD, when one of the robots was unearthed and utilized by the Mayans as a guardian of Central America against evil forces before being abandoned in the ruins of the Mesoamerican city of Teotihuacan in pre-Columbia, Mexico. Now I have to note I didn't go into much detail about the characters, and I won't, because I feel like it is going to take too much time in the video, but I do recommend that you go look at the Nostalgia Gamers video series about the Darkstalkers characters. The videos are super informative and I really enjoy them, so I highly recommend that. I will leave them down in the description below so you can go check them out. For the game's fighting system, they use Street Fighter 2's game engine, and according to the Darkstalkers wiki, new mechanics were added. Like a gauge meter similar to Street Fighter Turbo, that you can fill up and perform special moves. However, unlike the turbo gauge, the player's power would be drained until they could perform their special move. The story was rather simple at first. The main villain and vampire of the game, Dmitry Maximov, holds a tournament on Earth to see which monsters, the Darkstalkers, are worthy to rule the demon world. However, in the canon, the story was supposedly retconned or changed for a much better one, so the storyline is presumably not canon. I think it's for the best because I feel like the tournament story trope is very overused. While it's a good plot point to get all your characters into one area to fight each other, it can get very bland and uninteresting. However, I also think that they might have done this because they were testing the waters, seeing what would work and what wouldn't. While I do criticize the story for its blandness, I can see why they did it, and it worked really well. The first game was a success. According to the Darkstalkers wiki and the Video Games magazine, the game scored a 9 out of 10 and was named the second best game of the year. GamePro also gave it a positive review, saying it was similar to Street Fighter II in its gameplay. A lot of players found the game highly appealing with its anime art style and broad variety of characters. When it came time for a home release on the PlayStation, the game, while still praised, there was a lot of criticism for it as well. Some players and game critics felt that the game was too easy and suffered a big slowdown in animations and gameplay, and some didn't, and thought the game was just as good as the arcades. It was sort of a mixed bag when looking at the reception for the PlayStation port. Regardless of some of the mixed criticism, the positive reception encouraged Capcom to make another game. And so, a year later, Capcom released the next installment of the Darkstalker series. Night Warriors, Darkstalker's Revenge, or Vampire Hunter if you live in Japan. The game is an upgraded version of the previous Darkstalkers, with a new and better story, more gameplay features, and 2 new playable characters. The developers of the game wanted to create 2 characters that would hunt the Darkstalkers, as to give more variety within the roster. Those characters being Donovan Vane, a Dhampir half-vampire, half-human half-breed. When he was a child, something evil caused the vampire in him to awaken, and as a result, he killed everyone in his village, including his mother, and drank their blood. He cursed his blood and went out looking for peace. He devoted his goal to Buddhism, justice, and perfection with the help of the monks and ninjas in Asia. During one of his travels, he met a girl named Anita with supernatural powers. Her heartless, empty eyes told him that she was the same as he. He set off with her to hunt all the Darkstalkers in the world who attacked the innocent. Xianko and Mei-Lin were twin girls born in a village of Shinjitsuis. Both of them were raised to be Shinjitsuis, as they were taught of its art by their beloved master. They were great girls that people cared about and respected. Even though their personalities were different, Xianko had a very strong interest in guys and martial arts, while her sister was more into weaponry and cooking. The 2 were close. On a ceremonial night when they were 16 years old, they were close to becoming Shinjitsuists by their master, but their village and people were attacked by a group of supernatural beings known as Darkstalkers. After their master was murdered, their mother gave her life to protect them, but because of this, her soul was trapped in darkness by their powers. To release their mother's soul from the darkness, Xianko uses the Ianko Tenshin technique to turn into a Genji. Mei-Ling, her older sister, turns into a ward to make sure Xianko doesn't lose control of her darker half that has been building inside of her. The 2 set off to hunt down the Darkstalkers who attacked their people, and help innocent people as a dark hunter of the night. The new updated story is about an alien named Pyron who comes to feast on the Earth, and the Darkstalkers ironically become humanity's protectors. Like I said before, I like this change of story. It makes more sense within the Darkstalkers universe than just a tournament. It also heavily expands on the lore of the game and gives us a better look into what kind of world these characters reside in. I think this story made Darkstalkers for what it is and what people remember it most for. The new gameplay mechanics featured players stocking up on special bars that they can get to perform special moves and such. There's also new special moves like EX moves that can take up a complete special bar, and ES specials that can only take up half of a special bar. If you don't know what those moves are, just think of the term flashy flashy bang bang. To further customize your gameplay experience, the game also added an option on the character selection screen if you wanted your character to fight in a normal gameplay style or a style that offers auto-blocking. Nothing much visually has changed other than a choice to give the characters a new color scheme, which I never got in Capcom games in the first place. It's not doing much in terms of customization in my opinion, but okay, it's an addition. The ports for this game also expanded a lot. It became available for the Sega Saturn, and a couple years later it was made available on the PlayStation 2 in a collection for the franchise. The many collections for the franchise. We'll get there. The reception for the game was, again, extremely positive. So good, in fact, that it got several spin-off stories, like I said earlier in the video, an American TV show, and an OVA based on the game, as well as manga. And considering this is a retrospective, I think I'm gonna go over these. As with many video game adaptations, a lot of the time you feel like you're looking for a needle in the haystack. And what I mean by that is there are so many bad video game adaptations out there. It's very hard to find a good one, and this is not one of them. This was an American-Canadian TV show by Grass Entertainment. It aired briefly in 1995 and attempted to follow the plot of the game. It failed miserably and was extremely poorly received by everyone. The dialogue was really bad, and sometimes even the sound mixing would be off. To show you an example of how bad this show is with its dialogue and sound mixing, here's a little clip to just give you a good idea.
Here to work on your wilderness and survival skills. If you're gonna fight evil, you gotta be prepared.
Isn't that what magic is for? To get you where you want to go? And get you what you want? I should be studying magic, not playing Daniel Boone.
No, Harry. Those who depend only on magic are changed by it. It starts with the man using the magic, but ends with the magic using the man. If you are to fight evil, you must train the whole man.
Obi-Wan Felicia. Whoa! Now what?
Now, down.
Down is easy.
Harry, that's cheating.
Harry, look out! Harry! Felicia! Let go of me!
I don't think so. You wish to learn magic? Well, I shall teach you magic.
As you can see, not only is the sound mixing bad, but the animation is also overly stiff. The character designs are also really weird. For example, look at Rico. He looks like a naked human with gills glued to his body. You know, as a joke, I showed this to some of my Discord friends and they nicknamed Rico Sexy Squidward. This just shows how much they messed up with these designs. The characters either don't look good or their designs and personalities were just changed to something else. Like, for example, instead of Morgan being like super seductive and fun-loving, she's just really cranky.
Who are you? What are you doing with me? Why am I even asking? You bloodsucker! I should have destroyed you the last time we met.
Silence, succubus! I am your general.
Ah, you and what army?
It's really one of the worst video game adaptations out there. Seriously, what in universe's name did they do to my boy Dimitri? His skin's all pale and weird and his hair is red. What's going on with that? How do you mess this up? Also, the fact that it was made for younger audiences is baffling to me. To be fair, fighting games adaptations were very popular in the 90s, but I still find it really strange that they chose Darkstalkers to make into a cartoon. But hey, you know what? Mortal Kombat and even freaking Rambo has one, so I don't know. Honestly, I think this is an attempt at a cash grab and to follow the trend with the rest of the games out there, as Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat and all those, they were all coming out at around the same time. Me ranting about this cartoon can be its own video, but there's a better adaptation out there, so let's look at that.
The dark shall be with us always. I would crush even the moon herself so that it is preserved.
2 years later, in 1997, an anime OVA, which means original video animation for all you kiddies and new anime fans out there, was released with the same name as the game. It closely followed the plot of the game and featured a handful of characters as the main cast, while others got smaller roles or just cameos. It was able to bring out the style of Darkstalkers. The OVA was better received than the TV show, and I just really like this one better. I would definitely recommend it if you're a fan of the game or other anime like Dragon Ball Z or the Street Fighter 2 movie. I also really like how they set up the character relationships in the OVA. It gives the characters more depth, and I honestly wish they had made a sequel to this OVA or more episodes because it's a really interesting series. If we had gotten new episodes, maybe we would have gotten more scenes with the characters and give even more screen time to them because it's obviously the writing is there. It's really good. Like Street Fighter, Darkstalkers received a lot of manga and comics over the years, a lot of which is Japanese exclusive, so a lot of these titles is going to be using the name Vampire instead of Darkstalkers, so keep that as a heads up when we go into this list. I'm not going to go over every single manga title that released under Darkstalkers because there's so many of them, but I will cover the ones that I think are pretty notable. The first manga is Tamashii no Mayuko. This manga mostly focuses on Lilith, the other half of Morgan. The manga is Japanese exclusive, so there isn't a lot of ways to get it outside of Japan, but there is a fan translation that exists online, so if you could find that, then by all means read it. It looks very interesting, and I like the art style and how pretty it is. It screams shoujo manga. Darkstalkers Red Earth Maleficarum. A crossover between the Capcom's Red Earth and Darkstalkers. It's set during Darkstalkers 3 and has a collection of stories, mostly following Morgan and a few other characters from the Darkstalker games. This one was translated into English and you can get it pretty easily on Amazon. And finally, Darkstalkers The Night Warriors, a Canadian comic book series that focuses on the second game with a lot of creative liberties. There isn't much to say about the comic, I'm not going to really go into it, but I will say it is an interesting take on the games, and I think it's very interesting for what it is. So with all that out of the way, let's move on to Darkstalkers 3. As the success of Night Warriors Darkstalkers Revenge took off and became successful, Capcom figured it was time to make another game. In 1998, Darkstalkers 3 came out for arcades, featuring 4 new characters. Lilith Island. She's the third of energy that was split from the succubus Morgan. This excess energy was separated from her at birth by her father Belai, to keep her from becoming too powerful. The separated energy formed a consciousness of its own and named itself Lilith. Queen Bee. She is the leader of the Soul Bee race, a race that eats souls to live. Queen Bee stands for Queen Bee, which is her title, not her name. Their race lived in the lands of the Doma family, but during the time when Jeddah was dead, her race was on the verge of being wiped out. When Jeddah was revived and created the realm of the Majijin near the realm of Makai, she noticed a vast amount of souls in the new realm. She headed towards the Majijin to gather souls to fuel her soul bee's hunger and her own hunger as well. BB Hood. BB Hood is a dark hunter who is a S-class hunter for an organization that hunts Darkstalkers. Her skills in hunting are so good that she's considered as powerful as a Darkstalker. Her glare can even strike fear into the hearts of lower-level Darkstalkers. Jeddah Doma. Although he is over 6,000 years old, he is the youngest out of the 3 high nobles of Makai. He was always concerned about the future of Makai. He believed that if Makai was left to rule by Belai Island, the master of the Island family and the true ruler of Makai, then it would fall into chaos. Belai would most likely say that this is destiny in life. To Jeddah, Belai was a being who was not fit to rule. He looked for an opportunity to destroy Belai and wait for the right time to strike as a means to control the realm for himself. After the fall of Galan, the master of the Voshtal family, and the oldest of the 3 high nobles, Jeddah gained a confidant named Ozam. The reason he came to Jeddah was to be able to collect souls. As a noble, his skills were second class, but his ability to trick others and plan tactics was first class, as he was a genius in tactics. Ozam advised Jeddah about using the Gate of Makai. Jeddah, being confident in his ability to absorb souls, agreed to this, telling Ozam to break part of the seal to open the gate wider. When Ozam arrived at the gate, he felt the enormous power that lay within. He realized that even Jeddah would destroy himself if he absorbed all this energy at once, and saw this as his chance to take over the throne and the realm for himself. He tricked Jeddah and told him that he must destroy all seals because of the little energy that was coming out. After destroying the seals, he ran off to the far reaches of Makai. The fall of Jeddah met his rise in power and success of his plan. Though Jeddah's power was far greater than Ozam predicted, he was still destroyed due to the sheer amount of power that was coming out. Ozam gathered the remaining power and stored it into the Doma castle, becoming the new master of the Doma family, Emperor Ozam. After a century-long sleep, Jeddah was revived in Makai. He felt concern towards the realm of Makai, with nobles fighting each other. Instead of anger, he felt pity towards Ozam. Jeddah had already made up his mind. His complete revival and the cleansing of all souls. For this, a new stage was necessary. A new realm, the Majijin. Jeddah arrived at Doma Castle and extended his hand to Ozam. Although his powers were not yet completely restored, he had enough to remove Ozam. Ozam had become a spineless gourmet, and he was full of fear by Jeddah's return. Jeddah quietly whispered, "Ozam, I'm sorry, but please lend me your powers. Your soul will become the foundation of Majijin and will help the future of Makai." Doma Castle was taken into a dark space along with Ozam. This was the beginning of Ozam's salvation. Jeddah believed that he was the one that needed to recreate life by fusing all souls into one life form, the Shintai, the divine fetus. To do this, he summoned all of those with worthy souls to entertain his new realm, as a way to control humanity and the destiny of Makai. Not only is this a summary of Jedha's character, but this is also the main story of the game. With that, let's move on. Some characters were removed from the lineup. Some of them are no-brainers like Pyron and Phobos that were defeated in the last game. But then there's one that got removed that I found pretty interesting. That character is Donovan. Many fans thought at the time he was killed off, but in reality it was the hardware that was preventing him from being in the game. It wasn't till the PlayStation port until he turned up again. There was another character that was added that had Donovan's head and Dimitri's body named D. Fans highly speculate that this is what happened to Donovan after Night Warriors, but it's never been confirmed. Only heavily hinted at. A lot has changed in the gameplay. This time the game features a damage gauge system. Basically the game plays in a single round, with characters having 2 life bars and life markers. If a character drains another character's life bar, one of those cute little bats on the top disappears. This also introduces the Dark Force power. It's a gauge that lets you perform special abilities for a limited amount of time. As usual, the reception was great, especially in Japan. It was again named the second best game of the year by fans and critics alike. The series had it made. It was successful. It had spin-off for days, not to mention the abundance of crossovers. It had the potential to be a long-running series remembered by the masses. So, what made it fade away into the darkness? Years later, after the release of Darkstalkers 3, the once successful franchise came to a screeching halt. Other than a few characters appearing in 2 crossover games or the games getting released in collections, everything was extremely quiet. Fighting game fans wanted another Darkstalkers game. Yoshinori Ono, who was a producer on the Street Fighting games, has tried his best to get another game out there, but with no luck. Around the time Street Fighter Cross Tekken came out, there was a lot of teasers about another Darkstalkers game, and a short teaser trailer that was only shown at a convention as well. Capcom decided to test fans and see if the Darkstalkers franchise was still successful by releasing one final game, which was much to the fans' disappointment, another collection. Darkstalkers Resurrection. People are not sure if it's because of the time frame that it was released or if it's just not meant to be, but the game didn't sell well enough to make a new game, and ever since then, it's been dead and falling more and more into darkness. There's a lot of theories as to why it failed, but I think it failed because Capcom wanted to follow their own trend, aka the video game boom that Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, and many others started. So when that trend started to fizzle out, they just kind of let it slip away. It also doesn't help that Darkstalkers wasn't as successful as Street Fighter or Resident Evil, Capcom's biggest flagship series. It always came in second place, and I think Capcom is done with Darkstalkers because they don't see it as profitable enough. However, with that said, I will always hold on to the great memories of the first couple of games and hold out hope that in the future, maybe someday Darkstalkers will rise again from their premature graves.